I'm the guy you want to marry right now. This isn't the old Mr. Sunshine. I'm not happy. I can't make myself happy. I couldn't make you happy. I just want to think. I need to think. And I don't have much experience in that field.
Think? Think about what?
I don't know. Me, you, our lives. I'll tell you when I start thinking.
That's a different Bill Murray than we're accustomed to see. Bill Murray in his first serious dramatic role in The Razor's Edge, one of the new movies we're going to be reviewing this week on At the Movies. And across the aisle from me, Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And across the aisle from me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. In addition to The Razor's Edge, we'll also be reviewing Full Moon in Paris, which is sort of a French tragic comedy about a young woman who doesn't have a clue as to why her love life is in a shambles. And we'll also have a special X-ray segment on the recent career of action star Charles Bronson and why he hasn't had the same kind of success lately as, say, Clint Eastwood. But first, Roger begins with a love story called Choose Me.
Well, our first movie, Choose Me, is a weird and sort of hypnotic psychological drama, sort of a throwback to those 1940s movies about empty streets and lonely bars and broken hearts and confused identities. The story's a love triangle, but a triangle where the three people don't realize they all know each other until it's too late to keep somebody from being hurt. The movie stars Leslie Ann Warren as a former prostitute who owns her own bar, Keith Carradine as a mental patient with a mysterious past, and Geneviève Bujold as a talk show host who specializes in advice about sex. Now, see if you can follow this. Bujold and Warren become roommates. They both meet Carradine separately. He doesn't know that they know each other, and he proposes marriage to both of them. And then in this scene, Bujold is almost ready to take him seriously.
Marry me. You may never get as good an offer.
Oh.
I've been engaged 3 times, married 2 of those. Colonel's daughter and a teacher's assistant.
Oh, Mickey.
I love them both. I'd still be married if something hadn't happened each time.
So what happened?
What didn't? A little foreign intrigue with one, domestic crime with the other. They were both forced to divorce me. I understood. Got nothing to do with you and me.
You came over here expecting Eve.
I might have married her, but she wasn't at home.
You're impossible, huh?
You mean crazy?
I didn't say that.
I hear it enough.
You think I'm crazy?
I can give you a few pointers.
I have to go to work.
Oh, forget work.
Ooh.
I can get money in Vegas. You'll never have to work again. Marry me, damn it.
Mickey. Mickey. You can't go around asking every woman you kiss to marry you.
Why not?
Why not?
I only kiss women I'd marry.
Geneviève Bujold is so good in that scene, so touching and gentle and tender. And earlier this summer, we saw her in Tightrope. This is really her year at the movies, and I think she's a real good actress. Later in the film, Leslie Ann Warren, who is Bujold's roommate. Now, you have to understand that Bujold has told Warren that she has a different name, so that Warren doesn't know Bujold is the same woman who's on the radio, even though it's her roommate. So Warren calls Bujold's radio advice program, and with neither woman realizing that they're talking about the same man, Keith Carradine, here's what happens.
He kissed me. Once. His very first kiss, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a wonderful feeling. I just love that feeling. Karen, what would you think of a man who'd kiss only women he'd marry?
Well, I never met a man like that. Well, you know what? There was a little bit of that in this guy.
Don't you think she's going overboard?
Come on, just answer your calls. I know what that woman needs. I'd like to give it to her. Stand by for the news.
Karen, we have to break for the news. I've enjoyed talking with you. I hope we can do that again. I mean that.
You never know, Dr. Love.
And I hope you find that man again.
That's a good scene. I may have made Choose Me sound a little more complicated than it feels like when you're watching the film. This is not so much a confusing movie as a movie about confused people. The people in the movie are more confused than we are. There was never a moment when I was watching the film when I didn't understand the connections among all the characters, but up until the very end, they never figure out everything for themselves. The movie's very heavy on atmosphere, on dark streets and neon lights and sad jazz music and old shiny Studebaker sedans. And I guess the message is that some of those lonely hearts are just going to have to break. The best thing in the movie for me was Geneviève Bujold's performance. She's so touching as the love expert who's never been able to fall in love. It's a good performance. The rest of the movie is so heavy on atmosphere that sometimes the story gets pushed aside, but Bujold is wonderful. The story is fun in the way that it keeps throwing curveballs at us from out of...
So how do you vote?
Out of left field, if that's where a curveball comes from. I would vote thumbs up. I liked it.
And I do too, just that marginal level, and again, I think it is because of Bujold. I have never seen her give an uninteresting performance. I guess why there are such things as movie stars, because when she's on the screen, I don't care what story she's in, I will follow her. She did Coma, right, years ago, an action thriller. Here it's a psychological story. She's interesting here. A great voice, which of course begs the question, why doesn't her roommate tell us the same? She has one of the most unusual, wonderful voices in the movies. She should be able to
You're not supposed to ask questions like that, though.
But here's what I thought the film is about. You're talking about, a film is saying talk is cheap and good sex is very dear and precious. And I thought, you know, that's a pretty revolutionary thought for a movie. I like to see a film embrace
There's also something revolutionary about the story of the film, especially if you compare it to some of the machine-made pictures we've seen all summer long. You don't know from moment to moment where this picture is going. It starts out, here's a woman, here's a guy that walks into the bar. Who are these people? What's their relationship? Who's this other woman? How is she involved? The movie is not predictable. It's not one of those films where you sit there and after 15 minutes, you can predict the next half hour. Most movies that we see, one thing happens in each scene. One and only thing, and everybody knows what that thing is. This movie, there's lots going on, and not everybody can figure it out. It's refreshing. You're right. Difficult to watch, but refreshing. Coming up next at the movies, Bill Murray's first dramatic role as a serious young man searching for the meaning of life.
No, when we were kids, I was always terrified you were the guy I was going to have to marry.
But you just couldn't control yourself, could you? Oh, Bob. Oh, Bob, don't.
Razor's Edge. Tyrone Power starred in this story in the 40s. Now it's noteworthy as Bill Murray's first foray into deadly serious filmmaking. It's based on the Somerset Maugham story about a young man searching for the meaning of life following the horror of World War I, where he's seen some of his buddies killed. And Bill Murray was able to get this film made at Columbia Pictures by agreeing to star in one regular comedy the same year for Columbia. It's a little picture called Ghostbusters, only the biggest hit of 1984, so I think Columbia is way out ahead on this one, even if no one, including Bill Murray and his whole family, ever saw The Razor's Edge. There are a few intended laughs in The Razor's Edge. Bill Murray does not take his character totally seriously within the story, and especially when he searches in India for spiritual guidance.
I worked in a coal mine to come over here.
A coal mine? What was the intention?
I told you to make money to come over here.
That was the reason. What was the intention? Because if work has no intention, it's not work at all. It's an empty motion.
Well, what would you call washing dishes?
For me, this is a religious experience.
Hey, let me try that. Yeah, I feel it. Kind of like being in church. Pass me the soap, will you, Bishop?
Well, the heart of this film is about Bill Murray's relationship with two women from back home. One, a wealthy, materialistic childhood sweetheart. The other, a more exotic woman who turns into an alcoholic and a drug addict following the accidental death of her husband and child. Now, Murray's character does go to India and up to that mountaintop. His character falls in and out of contact with both women during this time, but late in the picture, he takes the alcoholic woman under his wing inside his Paris apartment.
Oh, thanks. Big trouble. Landlord's making me paint the place. You're gonna have to help.
Paint?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'll be back in about an hour.
What do you think you're talking to, Mr. Coco? I'll be back in an hour. See you in 60 Coke, huh?
Larry, I've got to go!
What about last night, Princess? You think that was for free? You're on the painting team. Get it? You don't think I would give you your freedom if this painting thing hadn't come up? What do you think of White?
That's a tricky scene because she's in a lot of trouble. He's trying to help her and be strong with her. At the same time, he's trying to be light and warm and friendly to her and also soften the moment for us in the audience. He does a very good job walking that razor's edge, if you will, in a dramatic acting role. The Razor's Edge is quite entertaining. It's sort of a Bill Murray Think Serious Thoughts picture. Murray can clearly handle drama here, nicely blending the wise guy character he normally plays in his comedies, the one we're used to, with the more spiritual character in this film. The Razor's Edge also works, I think, as a touching portrait of what friends can do or tragically not do for each other. Teresa Russell there in that scene is effective in a too small role as the tragically addicted woman. I wish the film was more about her character. It's far from a perfect film. It drags in spots. It repeats itself a lot. But overall, I think Murray is so comfortable on screen that we willingly follow him anywhere. In this film, he goes anywhere, from World War I, from a Chicago suburb, even to a guru's mountain. I liked it.
Well, I didn't. I agree with your criticisms of the film, but I also am not as enthusiastic about Bill Murray's performance as you are. And when you call it a Bill Murray Thinks Serious Thoughts picture, I think you put your finger on the problem for me, which is, in this film, he is first and foremost Bill Murray. Now, that's not necessarily his fault. The fact is that Bill Murray, as a comic persona, has been so impressed on all of us in all of these great pictures that he's made that it's very difficult to take him as anybody else than more or less Bill Murray. Additionally, for me, and in addition to that, a lot of the performance seems sort of wooden to me, as if he were trying to be too serious, so that I couldn't really see inside the character. He just seemed to be standing there.
Well, let me ask you something else. Didn't your heart break about these other women that he met?
I broke for the women. I thought the performances were very good. I also liked Teresa Russell. I thought she was good. I didn't really get the feeling of the relationship between her and Bill Murray, no.
Well, he's trying to...
That character all by itself, the Teresa Russell character, is a very good character, just as a little vignette, as a woman in Paris at this time going to pieces. That's terrific.
Well, I think that the whole film is... I felt that way about all of the characters in a way. They're all struggling. He's clearly more in control of himself than any of the others. The others would like to do what he's doing, venture off and be on their own. They're women, frankly, back in the 20s, I guess. And they can't go off on their own. So one's trapped in materialism, another's trapped in drugs.
Yeah, but even when he
goes
off on his own, it seems like he's so impassive. He looks at India, he looks at the guru, he looks at the coal mine. He doesn't seem to be really engaged, and that's what I missed about it. He seemed to keep that the comic aloofness that works better in comedy than it did here, where this guy is really plunging into life.
Then the whole question is whether or not you accept Bill Murray outside of his role. You didn't, I did. That's the difference.
Okay, next at the movies, Full Moon in Paris, about a woman who gets bored with life in the Paris suburbs and with the men of Paris. Full Moon in Paris, and it's by the French director Eric Romer, whose films are inspired by wise little sayings and proverbs, the kinds of insights that you might find inside a fortune cookie. This time, he wants us to know that if you try to live under two roofs at the same time, you will not be happy. And his story is about a young French woman who grows restless living with her boyfriend in the suburbs of Paris. She wants to move into town and get her own apartment there, and they kind of commute back and forth from the suburbs to Paris, where the action is. And here's a scene where she's at a party in Paris dancing with a young rock singer that she's met. emotional high points of Full Moon in Paris, and it seemed to you that that scene didn't have a whole lot going on, and not a whole lot goes on in this girl's life. She kind of absentmindedly meets these guys and kind of likes them, and then they kind of call back, or they kind of don't call back, and then she kind of goes out in the suburbs, and then her boyfriend kind of breaks up with her, and everything in this movie and in this woman's life is kinda. We spend a lot of time in this movie watching that woman do absolutely nothing at all. What's even worse, she's not a very interesting character. She's empty-headed. She's absent-minded. We get the idea she's more interested in decorating her apartment than she is about the people in her life. Eric Romero has made some great films, including My Night at Maud's, Claire's Knee, Pauline at the Beach. They were close observations of complicated people, but Full Moon in Paris is a boring observation of a simple person.
I like the way you describe a film you don't like. You really load it up, you know. I like if 2001 you don't like, you'd say, well, there's this kind of spaceship, and they kind of go up there, and there's this apes with the bones, and then there's this
Hey, that
slab.
sounds like a good movie. I'd like to see that movie.
Well, now let me tell you how I saw this one, because I saw it a little bit differently. It wasn't the kind of. Actually, the kind of isn't a bad word, though, to use, because she doesn't know what she wants. And this film, like so many of his comedy and Proverbs films, are about people who talk a good game, think they know exactly what they want, and act totally differently. And if they could only get to realize what they really want, they'd be a lot happier. So I think the film has a serious issue. I agree with you. She is an uninteresting character at first. Repellent. You wouldn't date her. I wouldn't have dated her. This isn't the kind of person that we like, that most anybody likes. And yet, I felt sorry for her at the end, because she is so misguided about what she wants, and the boys that she meets, the young men that she meets.
Well, you make a good case for her. Maybe what I should have not criticized was the fact that she is who she is. This movie is about that person.
Yes.
The fact that she's not a good person is not a criticism of the movie.
Okay.
I just felt that Romay here didn't really. He didn't tightly engage the material as he does in some of his other films. He seemed to be kind of almost as bored and almost as removed and distant as the character herself is.
The people in Pauline at the Beach are much more interesting. I think it's more challenging for him to pick a less exciting character and see if he can tell the same story. And it's pretty much the same story. These people don't have a clue to what they really want. And they would like one relationship. They think they want many.
Well, okay, then in that case, we have another difference of opinion. Yeah. Next at the movies, what's gone wrong with Charles Bronson's career?
Smart for the job, Janelle.
Our X-ray subject this week, Charles Bronson. Now, there was a time not too long ago when Charles Bronson was as big and as popular a star as Clint Eastwood. Eastwood had his big hit in the 1970s, Dirty Harry, as a one-man vigilante force, and Bronson followed suit a few years later with Death Wish, also playing an urban vigilante. Now, both films were big box office hits, both triggered more than one sequel, and yet for some reason, in the last decade, Bronson has been wildly eclipsed by Clint Eastwood. Now, what prompts these thoughts is the latest Bronson picture, The Evil That Men Do, a simple-minded story of Bronson acting as a one-man army to destroy a sick torture artist for hire employed by third-world governments to eradicate restless natives. The Evil That Men Do is not a classy production. It looks as if, in fact, it was shot on 8mm home movie stock. And Bronson's character, and this is much more important criticism, is devoid of personality or particular passion. He's just a gun for hire in this film, wearing his well-known hangdog expression. And that's part of the problem I've found with the last few Bronson pictures. He doesn't seem to be enjoying himself anymore. There is no joy in his performance. He seems to be sleepwalking through his scenes. I know he's not supposed to talk much, but he is supposed to be awake. By comparison, Clint Eastwood, another great stone face, is positively manic by comparison in his popular Dirty Harry films. And one more thing, Eastwood's character in the Dirty Harry pictures and others also face fresh challenges and learn a few things during the course of the film. Not so with Bronson. Lately, he's been playing sort of a sad sack and a know-it-all, and the result is a string of unsuccessful motion pictures for almost a decade now. So I guess what I have to say to Charles Bronson is, lighten up and start showing us that you enjoy making movies like you once did.
And another thing that he might want to do is start using better stories, better screenplays, and better directors like Eastwood does, because an Eastwood picture will have a good villain, an interesting woman, and Bronson is just a guy with a gun and a bunch of ducks in a shooting gallery.
Exactly. They are shooting gallery films and not much more.
That's right. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed this week. We both voted thumbs up on Choose Me, the melodrama about confused and lonely lovers, and especially we liked Genevieve Bujold's performance. But we disagreed on The Razor's Edge, and especially on Bill Murray's first serious movie role. Gene thought Murray was effective. I thought he didn't let us inside the character. Another disagreement on Full Moon in Paris, the French suburban slice of life by Eric Rohmer. Gene admired its portrait of a doomed relationship. I thought it was a boring movie about empty people. So I would say my recommendation this week would be Choose Me.
And I like The Razor's Edge as well as Choose Me. Actually, I liked all the films. I'm, you know, Mr. Excitement
What a great
this week.
guy. Just a pleasure working with you,
Thank you. I love movies. That's it for this week. Next time, we'll have reviews of Paul McCartney's first solo musical film, Give My Regards to Broad Street, and Firstborn, starring Tootsie's Terry Garr as a divorced mom whose kids don't like her new boyfriend. And until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Pan American, whether it's business or pleasure or a little bit of both, across the country and around the world, Pan Am, you can't beat the experience. Goober's freshly roasted peanuts dipped in delicious milk chocolate. Enjoy America's favorite movie time candy at home or at the movies, Raisinets and Snowcaps too. Uniden Corporation of America, manufacturer of Extendaphone, meeting today's communication needs with a full line of corded and cordless telephones.